So today I'm covering the 3 parts of raising your prices so you can start making more money in your photography business. Now, these aren't quick tricks or hacks that don't actually work. These are tried and tested methods of increasing your impact and overall pricing as a photographer. And if you put in the work, you'll likely end up doing the same amount of work or less than you've been doing currently in your business, but you just make more money doing it, which is the beauty of raising your prices. So to begin, let's start with a story. And it's my story when I first started as a photographer and created my first packages. And what I did was, back then, I communicated to the client maybe 2 or 3 things that was included in their package. I would say, you get hours of coverage, you get total photos back, and maybe a note about outfits or locations. And that was it. And then, of course, I attached a $1,000 price point to it. And I just assumed, the client should know what I'm worth and that I'm worth that price for some reason. So I did this for a while and just carried on that way, and it kind of worked a little bit. But then I started over time learning about pricing psychology and money mindset, and I started researching and reading about why humans buy things. And what I started learning is that value needs to be communicated in order for someone to make a purchase decision. And so I started hearing the term irresistible offer over and over, this term irresistible offer. And so what irresistible offer basically means is that your offer is so good, it's hard to pass up. It's hard for the client to pass it up. And this all really changed my mindset during this time. And it started clicking, what could I pack into my packages to reveal and communicate to the client that they were so good that the client would feel crazy to not book me. Okay, which brings us to step number 1 of raising your prices. If you want to book high prices as a photographer, you have to create offers that communicate much higher value than the price that you are asking for them. Now, I want you to use your imagination even for this one. If you can creatively concept of an exceptional offer, an exceptional client experience, an exceptional brand, and so on, then you can work your way backwards to make that concept an actual reality. So example, back when I first started as a photographer, when I was charging, let's say like $3,000 when I first started, I asked myself back then, I was like, well, let's say I can concept of a photographer that would charge $7,000. What kind of client experience is a $7,000 client experience? What kind of offer, given everything that is included in this offer, would make $7,000 feel inexpensive by comparison to the value that my client would get in return with working with me? And then I asked myself, so what's holding me back from just building that kind of an offer, building that kind of a client experience right now? So I determined I'm just going to write down what would it take to get to $7,000 of an experience, of an offer. What is that? Write it down. And then I made it happen. And then I started communicating that in my packages, in my website, in my pricing guide, and actually started writing out the line items, or value stacking, as maybe you've heard it said before, more than just saying, you get this many hours and you get this many photos. No, I actually started also adding in things for the client to see, like you also get one-on-one consultations with me. You get timeline creation with me. You get client welcome guides from me. You get online gallery cloud storage from me for a certain period of time. I offered fine art albums. I offered second shooters. I had 24-hour preview galleries. I had 1-month turnaround times. I had raw photo backups, etc., so on and so forth. And this is, by the way, one of the most important parts of my coaching program, the Business Blueprint, where I give my students a full training and pricing calculator where they can build out and then mathematically calculate the value of their packages line by line with everything that's included in them so that they can confidently raise their prices for them and actually see what their packages are worth. And again, what you do is you make this offer so good, so juicy, so full of value that it's easy for you to sell and it's hard for the client to possibly say no. Now, let's talk about the second part part 2 of raising your prices. So kind of during this time, I worked with a business coach on my pricing. And let's just say this coach really convinced me to raise my pricing significantly. And I had seen many of their other student wins getting massive results, apparently, in the reviews and testimonials. And so I trusted this person. And, I saw people booking their packages at double or triple their normal rates, etc. And I was convinced, okay, this is what I need to do too. And my problem with raising my prices was simply just pricing psychology, sales, basically just the strategy of creating this type of a juicy offer. So, I would say, okay, if I just took my clients who booked me at $3,000, I made the $7,000 offer, and, as long as I said the right thing, I would book them, right, at the $7,000 price point. So that's what I tried, and I implemented all the strategies and I absorbed all the mindset shifts. And then guess what happened? Well, I got rejected by all the clients who were inquiring after I had implemented my new pricing. Great, right? And they all said, hey, we love you, but you're out of our budget. And I didn't book anything for about 3 to 4 weeks of inquiries, which at the time I wasn't getting that many inquiries. And so that was devastating. To miss out on the ones I did have made me very confused and frustrated and defeated. And so I went back to the coach and I was like, yo, what gives? Like, what's wrong here? And the coach basically said something that was very hard for me to hear in the moment, but they said something that was true. I just didn't understand it at the time. They basically said, hey, you shouldn't be discouraged all that much that these clients rejected you, because most of your clients should reject you. And if you're that desperate for every client to book with you, that tells me your demand isn't high enough. So you need to market yourself more. And you know what? This coach was right. I was booking some clients, but in order to meet my goals, I had to book about 1 in 3 or 2 in 3 inquiries, which means I didn't have the volume of inquiries back then to support the price increase I was trying to pull off. Like if 3 people in a row said out of budget, it was devastating for my business. And so my pricing structure, my prices per package may have been perfect, but yet it didn't matter because this is fundamentally a marketing issue that I was struggling with. And this is one of the hardest things I've ever had to learn, but it was the truth. Which brings us to the second part of raising your prices as a photographer, which is to raise your demand. And by the way, if anybody is ever teaching you as a photographer about how to raise your prices and does not mention demand, please don't listen to them. This is fundamental to raising your prices. So what is demand? Demand is defined by how many people want to book you with respect to how many people you have the capacity to book. If you've got low demand, it means you have slightly above the same or below the amount of people who want to book you as you do dates available. If you have high demand, it means you have far more people who want to book with you than you do dates available to book. So whenever I'm in coaching or mentorship with a student and the topic of pricing comes up, my first question to them is always, what is your demand? And if they say, I'm all booked up for the next year before the new year even approaches, well, I'm like, well, that's pretty high demand. And of course, this varies based on where your area's peak wedding season hits. But if a photographer says, I wanted to book 20 weddings this year, but I only booked 17. Well, that tells me they have low demand. So what is demand fueled by? It's fueled by marketing. How many people are aware of you and your offer? That's what marketing is. That's what marketing does. Stronger marketing means higher demand. So how does demand impact pricing, you ask? Well, in order to raise your prices, you need an excess of people who are willing to work with you. So that if you have, let's say, capacity for 25 dates per year, and you only have 50 people total inquiring, well, then you have to book every other client to hit that 25 booking goal. Conversely, if you have 250 people inquiring every year, you only have to book 1 out of 10 inquiries to hit that 25 goal, right? Which means when someone says, in that case, hey, you're too expensive, you can say, that's fine. I'm sorry you think that, but 9 other people, maybe, are potentially willing to work with me at these rates. So you have a nice day. It's water under the bridge for you, right? Kind of seeing how this works. See, I don't know a single photographer, I'm telling you right now, who charges premium rates, who does not have high demand for their work. And I know marketing isn't a quick fix, but raising your demand through marketing is one of the most impactful, if not the most impactful way to successfully raise your prices and get them to stick. So let's move on to the third part of raising your prices. So you've got to build out a juicy, irresistible offer, of course. You've got to fully communicate the value of that. You have to aggressively market your business and build out high demand for your work. But are we missing any key ingredients here? So let me tell you a story of a photographer that I was coaching once. And actually, I've coached many photographers in this situation. And a photographer will come to me and say, hey, Nate, I've created a juicy, irresistible, value-packed offer, and I have pretty good demand, but after raising my prices significantly, I keep getting turned down and ghosted. Now, when I hear this, I respond in one of two ways. If a photographer is just getting turned down a bit more than usual after raising their prices, and they ask me, hey, what's going on? My inquiries are turning me down. I say, hey, that's a point. You should be getting turned down more. Your higher prices will be weeding out lower paying clients. That's the point of having higher demand that you have, because it's there to sustain those turndowns. You don't need to book every other inquiry anymore. You don't need to book out your year months and months before your inquiries stop coming in. Your prices should be high enough to book 1 out of 5 or even 1 out of 10 inquiries you get. But yes, that often means as well that 4 out of 5 or even 9 out of 10 people might not be the right fit for you, or may even say you're out of our budget, right? Rolex watches are out of budget for most people too. That's what makes them Rolex watches. Now, the second way I respond is if a photographer raises their prices, but then says, hey, I raised my prices, but I'm not booking anything. And I'm getting dozens of inquiries, but nobody is booking. Now, in this case, what often has happened is the client pool that you booked with at your former price point is not looking for a photographer at your new price point that you've raised to. Or put another way, if you've been selling $75 handbags to people in one side of town and suddenly you try to sell $350 handbags to the same group of people, hey, they may be the most genuine, beautiful, leather, handmade, well-crafted, worth their value handbags you've ever seen. But those people are never going to spend $350 on a handbag. That's just not a price point they're going to spend on a handbag. You'd have to market yourself to a different group of people, to the people on the other side of town, right? Which brings us to the third way to raise your prices. You need to market to a different market of clients completely who would be willing to pay your prices. Now, for some photographers, this doesn't apply to them because maybe their existing clients are already willing to pay higher prices, or at least, 1/10 of them or 1/5 of them, like we were talking about, are willing to pay their prices, which is amazing. And it's a quick fix and your demand can sustain that, right? But for many other photographers, they have to completely target different clients, completely different communities with their marketing, and maybe even change their branding and portfolio imagery to reflect those new clients at that new price point and show those new clients what they would want, right? Again, it's no good trying to sell $350 handbags to people who just don't want to spend and never will spend $350 on a handbag. They don't see the purpose in that, right? So let's recap. Number 1, create an irresistible offer. Communicate its full value. Number 2, create high demand for your work through your marketing. Number 3, target and brand yourself for clients who would want your offer at that higher price point and would want to pay your new prices. This is how you raise your prices. There's really no shortcuts. There's no tricks. There's no quick hacks, but this is the proven, tried and tested, bulletproof steps to raise your prices as a photographer and get them booked. So thank you so much for listening, and I will see you guys next time.